delay, I will introduce Deven, or would you like to? Deven Upadhyay, he's comes from Orange County. That's okay. So does the other guy on the screen there. So he has been with Met quite a while, worked with Met, then went to Orange County, came back to Met, and he's our assistant general manager and a very important resource in our agency. Deven, please.
Thank you, Director Peterson, and good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Just before we get into my comments and presentation, I know that our General Manager at Metropolitan Water District, Adel Haj Khalil, is also online, and I believe that Adel wanted to make a few introductory comments, so perhaps I can turn it over to him first.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Deven, and thank you, Director Peterson, and good morning to the board members and President Lewitt and General Manager Dave Peterson. I wanted to be here. I had to adjust my schedule because I really wanted to emphasize the importance of the presentation that Deven will be making to you today. When I came and visited with Dave Peterson, with President Lewitt, and with Director Peterson, we actually, my first observation is that that I was concerned that the Las Virgenes area, along with part of the western part of our service area, is singly dependent on one source of water. And I felt that we need to work on diversifying. I applaud you for doing the work you're doing on pure water, but I think we need to work together on how we move us forward in the future to provide you reliable, resilient water for everyone, including your area and the areas that are dependent on state water project. That's a priority for me. That's a priority for my board. I wanted to come here and commit to you that we will do that. For me, that was not acceptable to have that still we're in 2021, 2022, and we still have that kind of dependence. That kind of exposed us when we saw the zero allocation by the state on the state water project. We have done a lot in the past, but more needs to be done. And you'll hear from Deven about the things we've done and the things we're doing. I actually asked staff to move this as #1 priority on their radar, and they adapted quickly and moved quickly to identify solutions that we can do immediately to shift water. And you've seen a lot of shifting, I think equivalent to 200,000 acre feet of water that we're able to shift around by the efforts of staff. But really what we need to do is what we do next. So we have some capital projects we're gonna do now, capital projects we'll do in the future. And I believe strongly that we need to move quickly on diversifying the portfolio of every member agency, including Las Virgenes Municipal Water District, providing storage, that's critical, providing local water supply. Pure water is part of the solution, but we need to do more. Also, conservation, storage, and then resiliency pipeline to move water around. So we believe strongly these are important elements, and I believe strongly in the holistic solution, and we are in this together, and you'll have my commitment, and my board is committed to it as they've done in their resolution in November 2021. And basically they said, one of the part of the resolution, identify and implement measures to ensure all portions of the service area attain a high level of reliability against multi-year severe droughts. Measures include, but are not limited to, system improvements, local water supply development, new water storage opportunities, and water efficiency gains. That was what the board said. And I believe strongly that I will move it forward with the help of the leadership of Director Peterson and the board members, but really the staff of your agency, our agency. We've been working together, regularly meeting on addressing these issues. I appreciate Dave Peterson's efforts, but also my staff, and Deven being the person now who's in charge of water resource management. I appreciate his leadership and what he's done. And today he'll give you the presentation of what we have done, what we're doing, and what we're gonna do next. And I want to assure you my commitment to you, as you've heard me say that before, I'll be there for you. We're gonna work together. Met will be there because we believe strongly that we are part of a family and we're gonna take care of each other and we're gonna provide you reliability, resiliency. And this is something that we will work on directly. So I wanted to come in person and echo that commitment from my position, and I want to support Deven's presentation. I have to leave for another meeting. I delayed a little bit, but to come and say hi and really echo how committed I am to addressing this as a #1 priority for me and for my agency. Thank you.
Thank you, Deven.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Adel.
Good morning, and thank you for the introduction, Adele. And President Lewitt, if I may, I just wanted to acknowledge that this presentation this morning is meant to be interactive. At least that's the approach that I took. So while I do have slides as we go through, if you have questions as we're going through, please throw them out. I'm happy to address them as we make it through the presentation. And I did want to start off by acknowledging the extreme events that we've seen over the course of the last 2 years. Pandemic aside, we've been in what amounts to the worst drought on record, particularly for those in the State Water Project watershed. And that really has led to part of the reason why I'm here today with you, other than the wonderful invitation, and I appreciate that. It is very good to be here in person with you. But I wanted to acknowledge the leadership of your general manager, Dave Peterson. Dave has been part of a group of general managers at the Metropolitan Water District that have been working collaboratively with us to try to crack this nut of reliability, particularly for the State Water Project reliant areas. Meetings every 2 weeks with this work group, Dave being a key part of that to help make sure that we're on the right path and do this in a way that is getting feedback from the agencies that depend on this supply in a collaborative manner, and I very much appreciate that. With that, is it possible to bring the slides up? I can't, okay, thank you, Stephen. So if we can go to the next slide. One more, there we go. The key issue that we've identified here is the need to really focus on improved reliability for the portions of metropolitan service area that are most reliant on the State Water Project as a supply source. To give you a sense of that, there's about 6 agencies that are almost wholly or have a significant portion of their demands that are reliant on the State Water Project supply. We are able to deliver State Water Project water pretty much throughout our service area, but these agencies are the ones that in a drought like this, your agency included, are very dependent on those State Water Project resources. And we are committed to resolve this issue. I'm going to speak to you in terms of the things that we have done recently that we're just starting to receive gains from. The things that we're doing right now to manage through this critical drought, but also with forethought about how those investments will serve us in the future. And then to talk about a process that we're going through for long-term planning for what the future might hold. And if we can go to the next click. I'm sorry, Stephen, we do have some builds in the slide, so appreciate your willingness to work with me to move forward on the slide. So I'll first talk a little bit about the current drought emergency, but really the focus today is what investments are being made going forward for the long term. We can go to the next slide, please. And one more. Thank you. So what we've done, when we came out of the 2013, 14, 15 drought, our board and our staff recognized that we needed to make a number of investments to shore up reliability. And what we started with in the upper right-hand corner was in the 2017 timeframe, our board approved an investment in a new storage program. It is a partnership with the Antelope Valley East Kern Water Agency. This storage program is now under development. I've got a slide a little bit later that shows some pictures of the work that's going on to develop that program. It will allow us to capture high water flows on the State Water Project in years like 2017 and 2019, and 280,000 acre feet of storage, and that's the first phase that we've invested in. There's actually a second phase that will expand that further. and 70,000 acre-feet of direct pump back to the State Water Project. It's not via exchange where you're depending on other partners to produce supply, rather it's direct pump back into the aqueduct system. The second piece that's just to the left of that is improvements in our distribution system that we made, particularly in the area around Diamond Valley Lake, to move water, and this is out in Riverside in the city of Hemet, to move water away from Diamond Valley Lake further west in two phases. The first piece is that upper left-hand corner piece that allows us to move water to a State Water Project treatment plant that we have called the Mills Treatment Plant. Normally, it is a wholly State Water Project served facility, and we've made some improvements that I'll show you a little bit later in the slides, allow us to deliver other water to that facility now. The lower left-hand corner is the Gregg Avenue Pumping Plant. I believe that you're familiar with this facility. It is in a base load operation today. It came online after a complete overhaul that we did, realizing the previous facility was for emergency use. It would allow some pump back of Colorado water up to the west side, where we are now, but only on an infrequent basis for emergency use. And we revamped that facility to be a facility that in drought years we could base load.
I want to stop you for a second, please. You
Sure.
said about the mill, you were transferring water on the upper left-hand slide from a State Water Project water. You were going to send it to the mill treatment plant. How does that benefit us?
I will show you in a graphic a little bit later exactly how that benefits you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So the Gregg Avenue pump station, a little bit different, where it's not feeding the east side of our system. It's specifically feeding the west side of the system. There are molecules of water from this pump station that are getting into this service area now. That's roughly 55 cubic feet per second that we're able to pump from that facility day in, day out now that it's been revamped. It came online middle of last year, middle of 2021. And then the lower right hand is our ongoing program to shore up the reliability of the Colorado River Aqueduct so that we've got a base flow that we can deliver there. We just, and if we can go to the next slide, one of the actions that we took last year was, one more please, we actually started the flows in our Colorado River Aqueduct system at full flow, 8 pumps for the first time since 2015. So it had been a number of years since we were base loading the Colorado River to be able to shift over to that supply and minimize our use of State Water Project supplies. And that's what we had to start doing last year in early 2021. You saw late last year, Metropolitan's board declared an emergency for this area. We ramped up our conservation advertising program. We also made a pitch to the state that we would increase our turf removal rebates if we're able to get some state funding assistance to feed into that program. The lower right-hand corner graphic, you see the portfolio of resources generally that we're using. We have what's known as a wisdom plan, water surplus and drought management plan. And each year, we pull from the resources in that plan, whether it's taking water from Lake Mead to have a maximum base flow on the Colorado River Aqueduct to ensure that that aqueduct can be full, or pulling from the storage assets we've got on the State Water Project to be able to bring water into the service area. And to give you a sense, this last year in 2021, I'll show you a graphic in a few slides, we only got 100,000 acre feet from the State Water Project in terms of supplies. All of the other water that we received on the State Water Project that came into this service area in those 6 other agencies last year was supply that was generated from transfers, exchanges, and storage that we had developed. So implementing that plan, we started implementing that plan actually in 2020 because 2020 was also a dry year. And we've been pulling on those different assets to be able to pull water into this service area and meet the needs of these agencies. We can go to the next slide, please. Furthering what we're doing, the lower right hand, it shows you the 8 pump flow on the Colorado River Aqueduct. But in that upper left-hand corner, it shows you a slew of operational actions that we had to undertake. And really what this was doing is it was starting in 2020, and then we really put it on steroids last year in 2021, is doing everything that we could to shift water supplies from the Colorado River and from stored water further into our system, and to minimize the demand for state water project supplies, knowing that we had the lowest state water project year that we've ever had last year. We were doing everything that we could to do that. And a number of the investments that we had made and started coming out of the last drought just came online halfway through last year. So you were starting to see the benefits of some of those investments. But we also put some other programs in place. And what I mean by programs is we put incentives forward for agencies that have a choice. Let's say that an agency, and a key agency here would be the city of Los Angeles as an example. They are able to pull water both from the State Water Project or from connections that receive Colorado River water. So we put incentives in place to have them shift as much of their demand as they could over to those Colorado connections, preserving the State Water Project supplies. But LA was not the only agency that participated in this. While they were the largest, other agencies like West Basin, Three Valleys, Eastern, Western Municipal Water District, different agencies throughout our service area were able to shift some of their demands to Colorado connections, so that the raw demand for state water project supply dropped as a result, preserving that the water that is available could go to the agencies that really need it and are most reliant on it. If we can go to the next slide, please. We also moved forward with additional investments. So in December of last year, the Metropolitan Board approved a series of 3 projects, started the design on 2 projects that will allow us to pump water up to the eastern part of our service area that is also state water project reliant. So where we are now is on the west side, and it's a state reliant area. We have 3 agencies on the east side of our system that are also state water reliant. These are pump back systems that will allow us to move a combination of Diamond Valley Lake water, if it's available, or Colorado River water up into those areas. And in a drought year like 2021 or 2022, when these are operational, we could potentially take that complete demand off of the State Water Project system. So you would no longer have State Water Project supplies moving on the east branch of the system, and all of our State Water Project that's available could move to the west branch of the system, significantly reducing the burden on State Water Project supplies and reducing the amount of State Water Project that we need to be able to make it through sequences like what we've seen here in 2020 and 2021.
And is that to Eastern and Three Valleys?
No, it is to Inland Empire Utilities Agency, Three Valleys Municipal Water District, and the Upper San Gabriel Valley Municipal Water District. So as of right now, Eastern has been able to shift so that they're not taking any State Water Project water. So when I said the 6 agencies, I'm referring to 6 agencies that have to have some degree of State Water Project water. They cannot completely shift away from it.
Okay, so these agencies could use 100%, these ones could use 100%.
On the east side, they would be able to use stored water or Colorado River water once these projects are complete.
Okay.
Yeah. And again, these projects were just approved by the board to be added to our capital program, and design work is now starting.
So the overarching thought here is to develop a situation where we can get as much state water project water, however, I assume you're coming to it later and read the presentation. The fact of the matter is that we may have there are other things in the works, but the overarching thought is to give us reliability in case of no state water project water. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I'll show you the planning scenario that we're designing to.
Thank you.
Yeah. If we can go to one more slide forward, please. Thank you. In addition to the system, increasing system flexibility, that's really what I was just talking about. We've also been working with partners on the State Water Project to be able to get water through exchange this year. And what this shows you is we are pulling from our storage partners But some of those storage partners, one example is Arvin Edison Water Storage District. They have water quality issues that just emerged in the last few years, and we're working with them. It's TCP123 is the contaminant that was discovered there. And so we are not able to pump that groundwater into the State Water Project the way our planning documents had assumed. But even now, as we speak, they are one of the few agencies that has both access to convey water into the State Water Project, but they can also receive water from the Friant water system, completely different water system. And as we speak, we are exchanging water with them where they are taking water from the Friant system, moving it across the valley and into the State Water Project, and we're receiving that water. I can tell you about a month and a half ago, our expectation was that we would get about 4,000 acre feet in the January, February, March timeframe from this exchange. We've been able to work with them, acquire additional supplies. Right now, that number stands at 20,000 acre feet here in January and February. And we're looking at options to expand that even to potentially 30,000 acre feet, which, to give you a sense, that means that we could cover a full month of demand, maybe even more of that, just with this one program. So we're really able to execute some great exchanges here. The other one is with our partner on the east side of the system, San Bernardino Valley Municipal Water District. San Bernardino has State Water Project supplies. They also have some stored water that we're able to access. And our board in December, I mentioned they approved design for these facilities. They also approved an expansion of a mutual aid agreement that we have with San Bernardino to be able to get access to some of their supplies. So you'll see at the end of this presentation, there isn't one single silver bullet that we're shooting at this problem. There is a portfolio of actions that we're executing to provide reliability. If we can go one more forward, please. So I described these actions very generally to you. This graphic shows you, and it's meant to be an animation, but it hasn't worked. The green area is the area on the graphic that is State Water Project supplies and wholly State Water Project supplies. The orange is a blend of waters. Typically this year and in recent past, that orange is just Colorado water and water from Diamond Valley Lake. And our whole goal here has been to reduce that green area so that we're really reducing the area that is reliant on the State Water Project only, and then delivering the stored water and the State Water Project supply that we do have to those areas, and it can last for a very long time as a result of that. What I wanted to show you in the next sequence of graphics, if we can go to the next slide, is how everything that we've already put into place, not looking forward at future investments, the investments that have already been approved by our board, how they would fare under this kind of condition, to give you a sense of things. So interconnections, we've already invested in are starting, either completing or starting a process for major interconnections that will allow us to move Colorado water and stored water in a way that it's never moved before in our system. But also the investments for additional storage. We know that the 2017s and the 2019s will happen again. And in fact, in 2017 and 2019, we were not able to capture all of the water that was available to us. So we also know that if we had more storage and ability to capture water, we would be able to store more. So that last bullet there, we've already approved and are moving forward with construction. We're about halfway through the construction period on an additional storage program that will come to bear. So if we can go to the next slide. It's going to take a little bit to walk through this. I'd like you to focus first on the left side. And I know the wording is very small. I'll work through this. What you're looking at is for 2021, the scenario that actually played out. These are actual figures. The demand for State Water Project water in our service area by Metropolitan and all these agencies was roughly 750,000 acre feet on the left side there. The system flexibility that you see as the gray reduced that demand because we were able to deliver different water supplies to some of these areas So that demand dropped down to about 650,000 acre feet on the left side. And then what it shows you is how we met that demand. The purple was a small amount of exchanges with other agencies. The light green was State Water Project banking, where we were pulling from groundwater that had been previously banked with partners along the State Water Project. The orange is highly flexible carryover water that we had in San Luis in our name. It had our name on it. So we pulled on that surface storage in orange. In blue, we have flexible storage under our contract with DWR that rests in Castaic and Paris. So we pulled on those resources in the dark blue, the State Water Project Flex Storage. We bought some transfer supplies. Transfer supplies last year went for about $625 an acre foot before the losses you incur as the water moves. So we spent money on transfers. And then at the very bottom, the very base of it was the 100,000 that we got just as part of our 5% allocation. So that's the way that we met demands last year. What I wanted to show you is how that would look different if the investments that have already been approved, that are already moving forward, were in place. So at the bottom, the State Water Project allocation would have been the same. It wouldn't have changed. You still get 100,000, and the transfers that we could receive wouldn't have changed. But notice there's no dark blue above it. The State Water Project Flex Storage, we wouldn't have had to pull on it at all. All of the water in Castaic and Paris that we pulled in 2021 would have remained there. The orange, State Water Project carryover, is about half of the pulls that we had in 2021. So we would have had a lot more carryover there. The other banking and exchanges is the same, but notice there's a new light green area, both above and below system flexibility. The lower light green area is new State Water Project banking. We would have been able to pull from the AVEC program that we've invested in, because we know we would have been able to put water in it in both 2017 and 2019 because we had water available to store. So that program would have produced 70,000 acre feet that would have come to this area that we would have been able to use. And then here's the big one, is the demand for State Water Project supplies would have been a lot lower. Because look at the light green at the top, additional system flexibility. Remember I told you that the Gregg Avenue plant didn't come online until halfway through last year. And the new investments on the east side that would take the east side off the system are not in place. So once those are in place, all of those assets together, the shift program I talked to you about, shifting demands to different connections, was really only in place for half the year. So if we had all those assets that have now been approved by the board in place, your 2021 would have looked very different. And now I want to show you how that impacts 22. So if we can go to the next slide, thank you. The left side, again, if we focus on it, what we've said is that if there's a really high demand in 2022, and this is admittedly very conservative, higher demand than we've seen, before any actions, it would probably be 850,000 acre feet in these areas. And what you can see is that at the end of the day, because we've already used a lot of our surface storage, we would need about a 19% allocation to meet that. Now, we're not actually seeing demands that are running this high. So this is kind of a worst case. What I project that we need in 2022 is a lot lower than that 19% to be able to make it through. However, it gives you a sense of what we're seeing for 22 under a high demand scenario. But look on the right side. This is an extension of that analysis, the benefits of the things that we're already working on and to some degree are already in place. You can make it through with zero water on the State Water Project, only using those other assets. We are going to receive supplies from the State Water Project. We will receive an allocation. But if you could go to the next click, what we've been talking about is health and safety deliveries. And what this shows you is that not only would we not need health and safety deliveries in the most extreme circumstances, which is not reality, we're not focused on that, but I wanted to give you a sense. You'd be able to make it through a 2022 after historically dry 20 and 21 without taking any state water project allocation because of what's already in place. Now, if we can go to the next slide, it has already been approved, I should say. So bottom line there, the investments are already underway that would have actually eliminated our ability or need to declare an emergency, even in the face of a zero allocation for 2022. And nobody has said that 22 will remain a zero allocation. Even DWR said we might start there, but then we'll move off that. But the scenario I just showed you was, what if it just stayed there? What if you didn't get anything? You'd be able to make it through a 20% in 2020, followed by a 5% in 2021, followed by a 0% in 2022. So we know that there will be gains as a result of these investments, but we're not stopping. And that's what I wanted to speak to in terms of the long-term planning. So if we go to the next slide, please. And actually, Adele did a great job. This was the resolution that our board adopted back in November. It was a lengthy resolution that actually declared the emergency, but this was the component that cemented the commitment of our board. And I'll just read this. Identify and implement measures to ensure all portions of the service area attain a high level of reliability against multi-year severe droughts. Measures include, but aren't limited to, system improvements, and we've talked about some of those. We'll talk a little bit more about additional ones coming up here. Local water supply development, new water storage opportunities, and efficiency gains. So our board has resolved to do this. And if we can go to the next slide. We started a process internally with staff at the beginning of last year. And then we expanded it about halfway through the year to start to roll it out to our member agencies. And now we're in that collaborative discussion that I talked with you about earlier. I think there's maybe one more click here. We're at a point where we're fast tracking things to deal with the current emergency, but we're also focusing on what we can put in place to deal with long-term issues, drought issues. And if we can go one more click. This runs the whole gamut of things that I've already discussed with you for the current drought emergency, but you'll see some of these also help with the long-term problem. Next click, please. And Director Poland, the comment that I made about the planning criteria is addressed by this graphic. So what we wanted to show here is analysis that is, some of this is from DWR and some of this is from us at Metropolitan, and I'll explain. The water supply that you can expect to get from the State Water Project over a 3-year period. There's the wet cycles on the left, 2017, 18, 19. Metropolitan received almost 4 million acre feet, 3.75 million acre feet to manage. A lot of that water went directly to meet demands, consumers' needs. And a lot of that water replenished our storage. And it was why going into the 2020 period, we were pretty well set to be able to move through this drought sequence. So those are actual numbers, but the second column is what the Department of Water Resources puts out for planning for state water contractors. And that column represents what they say 3 average years will produce on the State Water Project. So to give you a sense there, that's about 3 million acre feet that under average conditions in a 3-year cycle, you would expect. And that's something they put out for planning. The next column is the lowest that we've seen in history. For a 3-year sequence, the lowest that has ever been produced was 2013, 14, 15, and that's why we call that the drought period of historical record for the State Water Project. And finally, in the middle, this is the last one that comes from DWR, and that is lowest DWR projection. This is, again, the planning criteria they set for state water contractors. They don't expect contractors to do their own analysis. They produce a document every 2 years. The term DCR at the bottom is their delivery capability report. And it's looking forward, saying, what will the State Water Project produce? And in this case, under the worst of circumstances for a 3-year drought. And it's a cumulative number that 3-year drought would produce about 1 million acre feet that agencies could rely on. not in a single year, but across those 3 years. That's what you could expect to depend on. The next sequence are things that we have produced at Metropolitan, and we've been in a long-term planning process that we refer to as our Integrated Resources Plan. That IRP,
What it was referred to it as?
Integrated Resources Plan.
Okay.
In fact, we're coming up to deliver the findings from that plan, hopefully for approval by our board in the March timeframe. And pulling from the findings of that plan that were released last year, the analysis shows that the lowest projection we think from a scenario planning perspective is actually more like 750,000 acre feet. So for the first time, we've departed from DWR's analysis. DWR doesn't do scenario planning analysis. So we had a discussion with our board about maybe we should do something a little bit different that consults with external experts and looks at scenarios. What do we think the worst case planning could look like through that process? So that's now in our integrated resources planning, our findings. And you can see it's lower than what DWR had projected. I'm having problems with my mask. My ears aren't big enough to hold this on, I guess. The next column in yellow is what we're experiencing through the first 2 years of this drought. So 2020, followed by 21, we've received about 500,000 acre feet. And it would stay there under a zero allocation for 2022. So that's 500,000 acre feet across 3 years. Now, I can tell you the actual water we would get if we desired it would be higher than that. DWR has already told us that they will deliver health and safety deliveries to this area. That's roughly equivalent to a 14% allocation. However, it comes with restrictions. Those restrictions include things like eliminating outdoor water use. So it's really meant to be for health and safety. That's why I'm not including that on this graphic. Our planning criteria is to be able to make it through without having to call on health and safety deliveries. One more click, please. This is what it would look like if, say, 2022 ends up at a 25% allocation. So that would be close to DWR's projection for the worst case. On that note, my expectation is that within the next week or two, we will receive an allocation announcement from DWR. We know that even though January has gone bone dry, there is enough snowpack, and what we're seeing with the reservoir response at Oroville and San Luis is that we will get an allocation announcement from DWR. But on the right side of the graphic is, and if we could do one more click, what we are planning for our 3-year drought assessment. And that is 3 years of 5% in a row. So 300,000 acre feet over a 3-year period. And what investments, what supplies, what interconnections are necessary to be able to make it through that extreme circumstance. If we can go to the next slide. So one more, please. So future extreme drought, key examples of things, and I can tell you that we started off with more than 100 ideas, narrowed it down to about 50 that passed kind of the smell test internally. Started working through a process with our member agencies to look at these, and key investments, additional pump back on the Sepulveda feeder into this part of the service area, expansion of the Gregg Avenue pump back, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. Other investments to improve our state water project supply reliability, additional storage. I mentioned that we invested in the first phase of the AVEC program. There is a second phase that we're considering right now, would be another 280,000 acre feet of storage, plus an additional 70,000 of pump back. And our regional recycled water program, which serves, and Director Lohill, you had asked about the agencies on the east side. It brings water directly to one of the largely groundwater focused agencies, the Upper San Gabriel area, that right now is dependent on state water project supplies. So it would further reduce demand for state water project deliveries. Next slide, please. And I realize this is going long, so I'll skip through this one. If we can go through one more and one more. So the first piece here, these are just examples that I wanted to share with you. This is the Gregg Avenue pump station, but an expansion of that pump station. The facility came online middle of last year. We've been base loading that facility up until the shutdown that we just had. And now that facility is coming back. So 55 cubic feet per second, day in, day out, that we're able to deliver there. And this expansion is roughly doubling the capacity of that facility, being able to pump up to the West Valley. We will be bringing an action to our board to add the feasibility work for this project and the next project I'm talking to you about in March. So we're teeing it up for our board to look at the feasibility work on both of these projects a month and a half from now, roughly. If we could go to the next slide. We'll be looking at a series of feasibility questions. The piping that leads up to Gregg Avenue pump plant, and do we need to reinforce it? Would we need to enlarge it to be able to get those kinds of flows? You see those tanks there that serve as surge protection for this facility. Would we need to expand the surge protection capacity of the facility to do this? Power needs, so everything, you would be able to, at the end of this feasibility work, make a decision on the sizing of the project, the cost of the project, those kinds of things. If we can go to the next slide, the next one is the Sepulveda feeder pump back. So you see in the yellow on this graphic, Sepulveda feeder comes out of the foothill feeder just downstream of Jensen plant at the top of this graphic. It's pure state water project supply, and it never runs reverse flow back up towards Jensen plant. It's always running downstream from Jensen plant. We have two pressure control structures that are in place right now. And what we're looking at is, would you need one or two pumping facilities to be able to move water in reverse flow back up to the West Valley? That would be, again, Diamond Valley Lake water or Colorado water that would be able to move up this way. We're not sold yet on whether it's a two pump solution or a one pump solution. The feasibility work that I had mentioned, we'll look at that. And this is also, the pipe type here is a little bit different. This is PCCP type pipe that needs to be relined. It's already in our CIP to reline this. So what we're now looking at is working in this analysis of the additional pressure that you would need to back pump into the design of the relining and the location of the pumps. The pump stations would likely be at these two PCS facilities we already have in place. The real question is, would you need one or two?
So and the supply to the Sepulveda feeder would be on the southerly blue line? How would it get water to it?
That's right. So the southerly, the Culver City feeder, the Inglewood lateral coming across. So right now, Gregg Avenue, as an example, receives water from Weymouth treatment plant. If you move water through this pump back operation on the Sepulveda, you're able to access water from two treatment plants, both the Weymouth and the Deemer plant. The Deemer plant is out in Yorba Linda. So you're also getting two different treated water access points there. And if we click one more, what you'll see is that the capacity potential of that option, it's likely more expensive, but the capacity is higher. You could get potentially up to 100 cubic feet per second that would actually augment the 55 CFS that you already have at Gregg Avenue. So then you'd have capacity for 155 CFS to move east to west, Colorado water and Diamond Valley Lake water up into the service area. And really what this is saying is that we're going to be doing similar feasibility analysis on this piece. Again, the action items for this are in March to start that work. If we can go one more, please. So this is really the process that we're involved in. We've defined this planning scenario of 3 really horrific years of almost no flow from the State Water Project. We're not doing that because we think that 3 5s or zeros will actually happen, but rather it is a reasonable worst case to plan for. The 5% allow some degree of exchanges on the state water project. So you would have some movement of water on the state water project. So it's not the catastrophic event scenario, but it is very, very conservative. And then we're looking at the initial investments we've already made. How do they fare under this condition? What do you augment those in orange with additional investments like what I just shared with you? And we're going to construct a portfolio. And our process should culminate in the discussion around that portfolio being this summertime. If we can go one more slide here. Storages, exchanges, pumping, and programs, including investments. We're also going to be looking at our local resources program. And Director Peterson actually talked about the committee structure that's been set up. We've got a committee that is going to be focused on conservation of local resources and that collaboration with our local agencies. It may lead to changes in our local resources program, where we provide incentives to focus on these areas of most need. If we can go to the next slide. This is the process that we've laid out, working with both the member agencies, and that group that I mentioned is meeting every 2 weeks, and our board. So a series of feedback there going into the summertime. And then finally, if we can go to the next slide, I just leave you with this, that the end result of this process, ultimately, Met and our state reliant areas are going to be able to withstand a drought that is far worse than anything that we've seen in history, and frankly worse than any of DWR's planning criteria as a result of this, without calling for drought reductions. The idea being that the leadership that your agency has taken by declaring a local emergency, the work that the Metropolitan Board had to do to declare an emergency would be avoided by these investments, and that is our aim. With the next slide, happy to take any questions. Wanted to emphasize our mission here, but thank you for having me here today. I can see some of you online. It's great to see you. It's also good to be here in your boardroom, and appreciate it.
Yeah, I want to, if I can see the full screen, yeah. Devin, I want to thank you for that presentation. I know it was a lot of work and a lot of time, and I also really appreciate you coming out to the board room today, and it means a lot to us. As I sit here as president of our board, nothing is more important to me, and I believe our board, in making sure that we have reliable water and affordable water too, but to make sure we have reliable water. I'm not a water engineer, but the one thing I've learned since being involved now as a board member since 2014 is the word redundancy. I've probably heard it a million times in the water industry. And when I learned that we get all of our water, we live in an area that has, we import 100% of the water that we serve. One of the only places I think in the world, I know Cayugas does as well, but there probably aren't too many places in the world that import 100% of the water that they use. Sitting here, I get, what keeps me up at night is that when you have one source of water, and that's the only source that we have, and we don't have access really to the Colorado, that in the event of emergency. I know you didn't mention earthquake, but that could be another thing that I think is potentially plausible. So I wrote some notes down, and with the help of our general manager, I just want to read them to you so I don't leave anything out. But we do recognize the partnership to provide reliable water, and with Met. I mean, we buy all of our water from Met, and it's been an amazing partnership since I've been involved, and even before I was involved, it's always been a great partnership. And Director Peterson represents us very well and keeps us apprised of what's going on. And your Met tours are amazing that we take to Colorado and the state water, and we couldn't ask for a better partner than you guys. But as with all partnership, we know we have to do our part, right, to make sure that we have water reliability, and we've done that. We were one of the first ones to do water recycling, and that makes up 20% of the water that we use. It was back in the early 80s, one of the first agencies to do that. And now with our pure water, we're spending $256 million to get 15% more water. I mean, it's crazy numbers, but so we're only going to be having to import 65% of the water after this project is done, which I think is pretty amazing on our part, and for our ratepayers to be able to afford this. But even with these investments, we expect to remain largely dependent on imported water. And we need, help to ensure that we can count on the availability of these supplies in the future. The conditions of the state water project caught us all off guard. It was the first time I believe there was ever a 0% allocation. And so we were one of the first agencies in Southern California to activate our water shortage contingency plan back on June 1st, 2021. First at stage 1 water shortage alert, and subsequently escalating to stage 2 water shortage warning and stage 3 water storage emergency, which we remain in today. Our board took additional steps of declaring a local state of emergency due to water shortage on November 2nd, 2021. And I think we remain as the only retail water agency in Southern California to even do so. As I look ahead, I is my hope, and I believe it should be our goal, that we don't have to take measures like these again in the future. And I know you in your presentation, you mentioned that you don't think we will. But we need to do better to prevent, we don't know what kind of weather patterns are going to happen in the future, what kind of droughts. And like I said before, earthquakes. The process that you outline in your presentation is a great start, but we need to be sure there's a broad agreement on the portfolio of projects, designated funding for them, and construct them. And as we discuss some of the other essentials of the portfolio, I think it's critical that we thoroughly evaluate improvements to MWD system that provide our region with access to Colorado River supplies. This is real serious for us, and I think everything should be on the table. I also think that we don't want to hear a lot of talk. We want to hear action. We want to be very constructive. We don't know which is the best way to go, but we want to analyze everything, and we want to have it on a timeline so that we, if we ever have a situation we don't have enough water for when you say health and safety, no outdoor water use. In this area, it's pretty serious because people live here because of the, when outdoor, okay, you can maybe say you can let your landscaping go, although it's hundreds of thousands of dollars to a lot of people, but also the swimming pools are a really important reason why people live here. And outdoor water use would also be swimming pools. And it'd be, I think, dangerous to have empty swimming pools without water too in situations. But at this point, I'd like to see if any other board members would like to share their thoughts.
Yeah, go ahead. Well, I've mentioned the overarching concern for long-term reliability. I guess it does matter to us. How do you provide that so we can have resiliency in the face of extreme distress? That's our concern. If I may speak for the board, that's my concern in reality. So I understand you made this great presentation. I'd really like to evaluate it and meet with you after this to discuss it a little bit so I can understand it a little more granular, if we can. Thank you.
I would offer that I would be happy to be back here to check in with you on the follow through, but I'm not saying that's what you're asking. To the extent that you have follow-up or questions, I'm happy to work with you or with Dave Peterson to make sure that they are addressed.
Thank you.
Yeah, Devin, I'd like to thank you for attending today's meeting and the care and thought that your committee and that Metropolitan has put together to improve reliability for our customers. And the Antelope Valley project, the East Kern project is, I'm glad to see that that's online. I'm hoping that we can get flows to fill that aquifer, but I just want to thank you. I'm really surprised at how your worst case scenario differs so greatly from DWR's, but I think you guys are taking the right approach. And I look forward to a minimum 14% allocation for health and safety by DWR. I checked this morning and there still wasn't anything. And so I hope they come up with that in the next week or so. Thank you, Deven.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else?
Yeah, I have a comment. I just want to say I appreciated the presentation. There's a lot involved. I find it interesting to get up to 200,000 acre feet. It takes little chunks of 17 and 8 and 20 and 37. It takes a lot of, there are a lot of different solutions to come up with the 200,000 acre feet. I'm just always curious about collaborations with other agencies, and I was just wondering what the Sepulveda feeder, which would be a very capital intensive project, how we could try to make that multi-beneficial to other agencies in getting to make sure that we invest monies in projects that benefit multiple agencies. Do you have any ideas how the Sepulveda feeder could do that?
You know, I think that there is potential. We've been in discussions with MTA to see if there is, they have assets in the area that quite frankly parallel, and they're even looking at doing some work in that area. Initially, I would say that a lot of those discussions have been partnerships of a defensive nature to ensure that we're preserving the opportunity to be able to do this.
Okay.
And so we're definitely mindful of the actions of other utilities that they could take that would foreclose options for us. And that's the key thing that we're concerned about right now.
Okay.
There are land assets that they have in the area that could also be used for the pump stations. So particularly that Sepulveda PCS is a very land constrained area. So we're having to look for other options in that area from a land perspective. And we don't have it, so we'll be working with others. MTA is one that we're working with in that regard.
MTA is?
Oh, the Transportation
Authority.
Yeah.
Okay, all right,
We're co-located with them at Union Station with our headquarters.
okay. We've built a connection, just so you probably know, we built a connection with Callegas that can go both two ways. And looking into the future, we realize for disaster planning, it's really great to have a connection that can go two ways.
Yeah.
And so that's just one positive about it for everybody.
The other thing on your point about collaboration, we've had great discussions with our own member agencies in this regard, but there is a lot of work that we've been doing, and I think very fruitful with agricultural entities in the valley. You know, with your president a little bit earlier, I think, mentioned the shock to the system that the current State Water Project kind of crisis has been for us, but it's also been the case for them. And so any abilities to do exchanges and get water flowing that benefits us down here, but be a partnership with them, there's very big win-wins. The ability to, say, move water in the winter period when agricultural pumping is not as necessary, in return for exchanges that could be unbalanced where they get some water back in the summertime. When you're an agency like us that has storage assets, that's very, very useful because you can park that water there and meet your own peak needs while doing a deal that works for them also. So we need to continue to cultivate those partnerships and relationships. I often hear concerns by folks about agriculture in the state of California, and yet I would say that some of our biggest partnerships have been with ag agencies. And
Okay.
Successful ones.
Okay, and way down south, yeah, and we also have an ag community next door in Camarillo and Oxnard. Yeah.
Deven, I have a follow-up question. I know we met with David Pettijohn at DWP, and he's very concerned about the western portion of his district. And he's a big proponent of wanting to get Colorado River water redundancy to this area. What is your gut about building up infrastructure to get Colorado River water to DWP, the other agencies, of course, us and Callegas?
So I was very optimistic about the Gregg Avenue project that we were able to complete last year. And I see that as the view changing in terms of the use of that asset from being an emergency asset to one that we can count on in any drought sequence and really baseload it. The two projects that I described to you today, I think both are options that would allow us to do that. The design would not be for emergency use. It would be, once you put a facility like that in place, can you run it for a couple years on end as you need to be able to make it through a drought cycle? We've got to work on the feasibility work. That's why we're bringing this action item to our board next month, actually March, to start that feasibility work, add it to our capital program. That'll be a big step for us, and then it'll define how big a task it really is. Like I had mentioned, is it one pump station or two pump stations? Does it change the design of the relining? We may have to reline some sections that we weren't planning on before. And so that's important to know now. And we're committed to get that work done, but we're also committed to looking at other things like the expansion of storage on the State Water Project. And with the city of Los Angeles, they built a pump station that is very near where the AVEC program is that would allow them to pull water into the LA aqueduct system. There may be a partnership with them where they could pull water directly into the LA aqueduct and get their demand off of the State Water Project system, which then is allowing the other storage on the west side to be available to all the west side agencies and instead of LADWP. So those are the kinds of discussions that we're having that I think are important, in addition to getting Diamond Valley Lake water and Colorado River water up into this area.
Yeah, I really appreciate you and your board analyzing this, because we don't feel secure with the way things are now, obviously, and we don't care where the molecules come from. We just need to have a redundancy plan. And to me, my gut, it makes more sense to me to have, if there's two water systems, one is state water and one is Colorado, it makes more sense to me, just as, without, before the analysis, obviously, but it makes more sense to me to have access to both. So if one goes down, you have the other one. But I'm really looking forward to your analysis, and I appreciate the urgency that you're putting on this.
Thank you.
Okay, any staff or board members have any questions for Deven while we have him here in the boardroom? It's captivated. Okay, I see. No, Deven, I really appreciate it, and thank Adele as well for coming, for being on the call. It means a lot to us, and thank you, Director Peterson, for helping set this up, and Dave Peterson for working so hard on this, and we really appreciate it.
I just want to deal with one issue, and that was I told it they'd have a report on the allocation on the 1st. I was wrong. The state they've decided to change the method they currently use, I understand, is it takes 3 months to do an allocation. They take the snow report, which came in at 160%. Now Deven says it's about 130%, but at that time it was 160%. And they normally will make the allocation, but they're working on a new program so they can make it much faster to make the allocation. So I hope he's right that they have an allocation next week.
Sweet.
Thank
I
you.
apologize for misleading you.
There's a first for everything, Glenn.